conquest. All of this promised in our reading from 2 Corinthians. Amen.
Homilies from All Saints with Father Pat Reardon, pastor of All Saints Orthodox Church in Chicago and senior editor of Touchstone magazine. This has been a presentation of Ancient Faith Radio.
Boldly proclaiming the truth of the risen Christ. This is Ancient Faith Radio, timeless Christianity, 24 hours a day.
Whose Stewardship Calling ministry is focused on helping people, parishes, and Christian organizations discover and live their stewardship callings and embrace true stewardship and generosity so that they may have a good account before the awesome judgment seat of Christ. Here's Bill.
What would you do if I asked you to give away $30,000 of your money with no assurance that you would get anything in return other than a postcard? For over 8 years now, that's exactly what I've been doing all over the United States and every chance I got. And not surprisingly, while I got a lot of nervous smiles, I never got any takers. And then one magical day in November of 2019, this simple country lawyer was invited by my good friends Metropolitan Methodius and his chancellor, Father Ted Barbas, to come to Boston. They gave me the privilege and blessed opportunity to address the amazingly dedicated and sophisticated clergy and lay leadership of the Greek Orthodox metropolis of Boston, and to present the Igniting the Flame of True Christian Stewardship program with the 15 proven tactics to substantially improve our stewardship ministry and results. And once again, I told the assembled masses a story that they'd all heard many times before. It was a story about a guy who gave some people some of the money and came back to see what they did with it. Some did amazing things, and one guy dropped the ball. We Christians know this story as the parable of the talents. And if you need a refresher, check out the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 14 through 30. I asked the assembled faithful in Boston if they believed in that parable and the message, and they all nodded their heads in agreement. So then I challenged them to do just that and give away $50,000 or $40,000 or $30,000 or some amount of their money. And again, a lot of nervous smiles, some people looking away. But right in the middle of the room, I actually saw a spark and a twinkle in the eyes of two people, one whom I knew and the other whom I had never seen before. I made a mental note to follow up with them because maybe I had my first taker. See, I knew something perhaps they didn't fully appreciate. If they accepted my challenge, it would change their lives and the culture in their church in a very, very positive way. Having toiled in the vineyards of Christian church stewardship for over 13 years, I'm honored to be invited to meet and work with parishes of many different Christian denominations, in addition to the over 500 Orthodox parishes I've been blessed to present to and serve. And over 8 years ago, in discussions with a Roman Catholic parish in the suburbs of Atlanta, they decided to prove the parable of the talents was equally as relevant and effective in current times. And I shared with my Boston area friends exactly how this experiment transformed that parish. It materially increased their stewardship and substantially improved the culture of generosity in their church. And this small Roman Catholic parish gave out many tens of thousands of dollars to their parishioners to put it out into the world and to cause it to multiply. And multiply it did. So what did they get for it? Lives were transformed. People who needed it most were helped in extraordinary ways. Small miracles occurred. The media and the community took notice. That parish and its parishioners proved that they could be the light of the world. And coincidentally, that church received back contributions that actually exceeded the amount that they gave away. But there I was, 1,079 miles away, trying to convince these wonderful and dedicated Orthodox Christians in the metropolis of Boston that the parable of talents was real and could be repeated if only they would give away tens of thousands of their hard-earned money. And in a room of almost 200 people, I saw two people that might be willing to buy what I was pitching. And it was time to try and make the sale. So what happened next was amazing. Stay tuned. Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome to Stewardship Calling in the first Wednesday series on Ancient Faith Radio. This is Bill Marianis from Atlanta and Gainesville, Georgia, and stewardshipcalling.com. I have a simple premise. You have been called by your Creator to a personal calling, a reason to your life and a reason for your life, something you need to do with all of the gifts over which God has made you a steward. It's what I call your stewardship calling. St. Paul makes it crystal clear that we all have a calling. In his letter to the Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1, he clearly states, quote, "I beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called," end quote. Until 2017, by day, I was blessed to be a partner in a great international law firm of over 1,100 lawyers, where I was managing partner of our Atlanta office, and I practice in the area of mergers and acquisitions and corporate law. But my why, my personal calling, was to be a stewardship calling evangelist. I'm here to help people and parishes discover and live their stewardship callings so that they may have a good account before the awesome judgment seat of Christ as we follow Christ's great commandment to love one another and his great commission to make disciples of all nations. Welcome to that journey. Now, this program and a lot of other helpful tools and information about effective churches and stewardship and church strategic planning and servant leadership and other topics, you can find at my always free website, stewardshipcalling.com, and you can always reach me at bill@stewardshipcalling.com. That's bill@stewardshipcalling.com. And to our listeners tonight, we want you to join our chat room at ancientfaith.com/radio/live. Just went live. ancientfaith.com/radio/live. Or better yet, call in and interact with us by calling at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. So there I was in November 2019 in a beautiful church hall in Boston after delivering a full-day stewardship training program, and one priest comes up to me and says he wants to take me up on my offer. "I'll be in touch," he said. Now, I'd heard that before, but I knew that this priest was different. Well, it didn't take long before my guest tonight, my dear friend and the amazingly inspirational clergyman and evangelist, Father Luke Veronis, called me and asked me to tell them about the things they needed to consider if they pursued this good and faithful servant challenge. He said he and his parish leader had discussed it on the way home from my stewardship program, and they were intrigued because their parish was in its 100th year of existence, and they wanted to celebrate in many and different and critical ways. Father Luke's parish leadership asked themselves two tough questions. Number one, who are we as Orthodox Christians and as the church? And number two, what do we want to be known for as a church? These are exactly the questions every parish needs to ask themselves. This is an essential part of the stewardship calling strategic planning process I lead. And as you might imagine, he and I talked for a long time about this idea. The next day, I sent Father Luke an outline of the questions his parish would need to answer if they were going to try this program. Now, for anyone who's interested in how to do this in your own church, I provided this detailed roadmap planning document that you can download by going to my always free website, stewardshipcalling.com, head over to the Internet Radio, Ancient Faith Radio tab, and just scroll down to the program notes for this May 6th, 2020 program. And you'll not only be able to download this good and faithful servant implementational planning document, but Father Luke gave me the permission to include the handout that he created for this program at Saints Constantine and Helen in Webster, Mass., along with a document that recounts countless of the testimonials from the faithful whose lives were changed by this challenge. Within weeks, my guest tonight had his parish council on board, had found a generous benefactor to fund $30,000, and had developed the materials and a detailed plan to roll it out. And then he had the courage and strength of character to stand in front of his congregation and the whole world and tell them that they were going to give out $30,000 to all of them. And all they had to do was return a postcard. And in that card, the only thing they needed to include was, number one, who they helped with the money they were giving. Number two, how the recipient felt after receiving that gift. And number three, how the parishioner felt after being able to be generous and helping someone else. Father Luke will tell the story in a few minutes better than I could, but let me just share with you some of what people who participated said about their experience. One parishioner responded, quote, "We decided to match and go beyond what the church gave us by donating our own money in a variety of ways. Our goal is to donate to a charity or individual every month for an entire year," end quote. Another parishioner reported, quote, "I honestly say that The donation has made our hearts full and we felt tremendously blessed, end quote. A different family reported, quote, in the end, this challenge made us all think a lot and pray a lot about the best way to glorify God with the talents he's given us. It really changed the way I think going forward. This may be the greatest lesson from this exercise, end quote. The parishioners experienced the unimaginable joy in helping others. Listen to this. One of them reported, quote, when my husband offered this man our gift, he looked at us in disbelief. Many tears flowed from the men together in the garage, sharing a gift that was so needed for his family, end quote. And to prove the good and faithful servant challenge was changing the culture of generosity in the parish, another parishioner reported, quote, I have to say that donating this money made us feel as if we wanted to help those in need even more. And another Orthodox Christian concluded, quote, my eyes filled with tears and my heart was gladdened by being able to help others, end quote. As a part of the program, parishioners are encouraged to have a family discussion about what they would do with these gifts. And many families took that advice seriously and actually did engage in a dialogue to learn how to actually teach and live stewardship. Listen to what one family said, quote, as a family, it was much more difficult to decide how to use this gift. We came up with many different ideas. It feels great to give, and people are so appreciative. It was also an educational process to get the kids to think about all the different ways good could be done, end quote. On previous Stewardship Calling shows, I've presented the evidence that proves that the stewardship habits we want our children and families to cultivate actually come from the lessons that we teach them by our own words and actions. And there's no better time than now to teach the right behaviors of selfless service and sacrificial giving to our youth and our emerging adults. And as an aside, to prove my point, a friend of mine here in Georgia saw the email announcement of tonight's program and told me an inspirational personal story he said I could share with you. He told me that my message about this program hit close to home, as about 10 years ago, he started sending a check to his 3 nieces and nephew at Thanksgiving with a letter asking them to give 20% of it away. And they were just to send him a note telling him who or what they helped. 3 of the 4 did great, and they shared with him how good it felt. And he noticed that they often would give more than the suggested 20%. And he also observed that, much like in the parable of the talents, that one of the nieces was resentful and that he suggested that she give away 20% of what she now viewed as her money, even though it was actually a gift from him. He reported that the recalcitrant contributor now gets a smaller check while the others get the original amount and sometimes more. And for those who have read the parable of the talents, does this sound familiar? And by the way, this is an idea that each and every one of us can do with our own youth, children, family members. What was even more powerful to me is what he told me about what the overachieving givers of his nieces and nephews did. He introduced the Uncle Matching Grant Program. If they gave away more than 20%, he actually matches the gift to any charity they support. And what my good and faithful servant friend is doing is helping to create and reinforce a habit of helping others in the next generation of his family. And this is what we all need to do in our churches. And the good and faithful servant challenge that we're going to talk about tonight is just one way to do that. My April 1st, 2020 Stewardship Calling program was devoted to a pretty comprehensive list of specific things that parishes can do in 10 strategic areas as a result of any disruptive crisis, kind of like the coronavirus we're experiencing now. And in that show, I issued the Corona Contribution Challenge. And this is kind of a personal version of the Good and Faithful Servant Challenge that we're discussing here tonight. As a result of the current pandemic and the CARES Act, most Americans are going to be receiving or already have received a 4-figure check from the federal government that's basically a return of our hard-earned tax dollars. Now, let me be clear. If anybody needs that money for their family, by all means, please definitely keep the money and provide for your family without any hesitation or concern of any kind. But at the same time, by the grace of God, perhaps you may not have critical need of these financial payments at this time. And for any of us who are so blessed, I would like to encourage you to join me in making what I'm calling the Corona Contribution. And this Corona Contribution Challenge involves taking whatever check you receive or whatever portion of it you could afford to part with and contributing it to God's kingdom. Of course, I'd start by suggesting that this windfall be directly contributed to your local parish, because they certainly need the resources in these troubled times. My wife and I have chosen to contribute to this amazing Ancient Faith radio ministry to basically help stabilize the tragic decline in financial resources that all of our charities are realizing. But wherever your heart and the Holy Spirit direct you, I ask you to accept the Corona Contribution Challenge and take this unanticipated blessing and put whatever you can afford back into God's kingdom to see how you can cause it to multiply. And to show you how sometimes we can't even imagine the far-reaching consequences of our generosity. Please let me share with you that the Good and Faithful Servant Challenge that we're discussing tonight from the wonderful parish of Saints Constantine and Helen in Webster, Massachusetts, not only transformed the lives of its parishioners, but it captured the imagination and the spirit of the non-Orthodox community in the Webster, Mass area in which the parish is located. Father Luke and his exemplary parish have been featured in several newspaper articles and TV shows. Imagine your church being in the media limelight, not because you make a great gyro sandwich, but because you're actually living the lessons our Lord and Savior taught us and helping others in times of need. Can you think of a better message of outreach and evangelism? Listen to just a few comments received by Father Luke from some of the non-parishioners. Quote, "This Good and Faithful Servant Challenge is brilliant. I'm not even from your church, but two of my close friends told me all about it. This idea is quite a lesson for me personally," end quote. And quote, another person said, quote, "I'm floored. This to me shows the fruit of the Holy Spirit. Your church is walking the walk," end quote. And amazingly, an anonymous donor read what the parish was doing in a local newspaper and was so inspired by it that they sent the church $150 worth of gift cards for them to give away. Now, look, I could go on, but I want you to instead hear from Father Luke Veronis himself as to how positively transformational this Good and Faithful Servant Challenge has been. But before I take a short break and then bring him on the program, I wanted to publicly thank Father Luke and his beautiful community of Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church. Well before the COVID-19 pandemic hit us all, they had the courage to accept this Good and Faithful Servant Challenge and look into their hearts and allow the Holy Spirit to guide them down this path. And what's more importantly in some respects is they had the faith to trust in the very message of generosity and service that our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ taught every chance he got and in everything he did. My brothers and sisters, this is what courageous leadership looks like, and I want you to hear it from Father Luke Veronis himself. So let's take a short break right now, and when we come back, I'll welcome my special guest, Father Luke Veronis, as we dig into the critical topic of discovering what happens when we practice true generosity. Remember, we'd love to hear your questions or comments, so please get ready to call us in on 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. You can email me at stewardshipcalling@ancientfaith.com. You can join the chat room at ancientfaith.com/radio/live, and we are broadcasting live on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. So let's take a short break and we'll be right back.
Bill will be right back, but the lines are open if you want to ask a question or offer your thoughts. The number is 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO.
This is Father Philip Lemasters from the Eastern Christian Insights podcast. Ancient Faith Radio is special to me because it helps to draw me back to what's important. We all know how easy it is to be distracted, but through Ancient Faith, it is so easy to hear beautiful chant, to hear insightful commentaries, talks on the lives of the saints, on the Holy Scriptures, brief morning inspirational recordings to get the day started off in the right direction. I need Ancient Faith to help me turn aside from my earthly cares and to refocus on God. And that's why I'm so thankful for its wonderful ministries.
Stewardship Calling is back, and we are ready for your call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Bill Marianis.
Welcome back to Stewardship Calling, in our first Wednesday program where we're exploring how generosity can transform a person's and parish's culture. Please remember, we'd love to hear from you by calling at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. Or join the chat room at ancientfaith.com/radio/live, or the live streaming that's going on now on every social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, you name it. I am extremely excited to finally welcome my special guest and dear friend, Father Luke Veronis. For those of you that don't know, Father Luke pastors the Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church in Webster, Mass., and also serves as the director of Missions Institute of Orthodox Christianity at Holy Cross Greek Orthodox School of Theology, and he teaches there as an adjunct instructor, both at Holy Cross and Hellenic College. He also serves on the board of directors of the Orthodox Christian Mission Center. Now, when most of us think about Father Luke's unbelievable and incredible ministry, perhaps the first thing we think about is his extraordinary and exemplary missionary heart, service, and his just inspiring evangelical spirit. For those of you that don't know, Father Luke's been involved in Orthodox Church missionary movement since 1987. Together with his wife, Presbyter of Faith, he served as a long-term missionary in Albania for 10 and a half years, and as a short-term missionary in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Ghana, and for 18 months. And he's led 8 short-term mission trips from his church to work with Project Mexico and building homes for the poor in Tijuana, Mexico. And every year, for the past 10 years, he teaches a summer course at Hellenic College Holy Cross entitled The Missiology and Life of Archbishop Anastasios of Albania, where he takes a class to Albania for 12 years. Father Luke and Presbyter of Faith have helped Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church in Webster transform from what was at one time a parochial declining parish of 90 supporting families to an incredibly vibrant outreaching community of over 170 families. And this year, this incredible parish is celebrating their 100th anniversary. He's published works in Go Forth, a journal of missions and resurrections in Albania, and several other publications. He graduated from Fuller Theological Seminary with a THM in missiology, a Holy Cross Greek Orthodox School of Theology with a Master of Divinity, and Pennsylvania State University with a BS in Secondary Education Mathematics. And he and his wife, Presbyter of Faith, have 4 children. Father Luke, I want to officially welcome you to Stewardship Calling on Ancient Faith Radio.
Thank you very much, Bill. It's great to join you.
All right, now look, before we get started, I need to establish 3 ground rules and make sure you can live with them. Otherwise, we're done, okay? You ready?
All right.
All right, number 1, I will not make fun of your funny Boston accent, and you can't make fun of the way I talk, all right?
Okay, all right, that's a deal.
Number 2, we'll not discuss the war of northern aggression, what y'all call the Civil War, and we will never, ever discuss the Battle of February 2017 when that Boston football team did the unthinkable thing to my poor Atlanta Falcons in Super Bowl 51. Are we agreed?
We agree on that. Okay.
All right. Number 3, and finally, look, I want us to have a frank and candid conversation like what you and I always do, and I want you to be yourself and tell it like it is. So let's dig in with my first question. When you first heard us talk about the Good and Faithful Servant Challenge, what was your reaction and what made you want to do it in your parish?
Well, you gave a wonderful 5-hour seminar on stewardship for the metropolis of Boston, and I was there with my stewardship chair, Jared Quill, and you offered so much information, so much that we were writing down, just lots of great ideas on stewardship. So we were inspired by that. But at one point you mentioned this idea of the connecting with the good and faithful steward and the parable of the talents. And you mentioned some church down in Atlanta had done something like that. And it just struck both me and my stewardship chair, Jared. And on our way home, we really talked about it and we were getting excited about it. And we thought maybe we should try something like this because we were preparing to do a year-long celebration of our church's 100th anniversary. We were trying to think, what can we do that would be different, unique, exciting, a little radical? And so we were playing with the idea and we really liked it. And then we contacted you, talked with you. You gave us the information of the church that did it down in the Atlanta area. I think it was a Roman Catholic church. And,
right.
And the way they did it is they gave out their parishioners, I think it was $15,000. They gave out their parishioners and they asked their parishioners to keep it for 1 year and do something with it where they could increase the talent. And at the end of the year, they received back from that $15,000 they gave to the parishioners, they received back $45,000. And so we read that and thought about that. But we thought we want to do it in a little bit of a different way. We're not going to ask people to take the money and try to increase it and give us money back. What we want to do is really help people discover the joy of giving. And so we thought, let's give money to our parishioners and just ask them to do one thing: glorify God with the money by helping some people in need, by looking around, opening up your eyes to see the needs all around you, individuals, charities, whatever, and then discover the joy of giving. And I know that for some of my parishioners, maybe this is going to be the first time that they really give away some money. So I just thought it could be a great teaching tool, an inspiring moment, and it could help to cultivate a spirit in our church, a spirit that we've been cultivating for the last 15 years. But to create this just culture in our church that, what does it mean to be a Christian? Well, we're blessed by God, but we're blessed so that we bless others. We receive blessings from God so that we give to others. We don't receive the blessings of God to keep them to ourselves, to just enjoy them ourselves, or to enjoy them as a community. We're blessed so that we bless others. And that's one of the main ideas we wanted to get across. And we really got excited about this idea.
Well, I got to commend you, because in 8 years of pitching, y'all were the first two that actually really caught it. And I honestly saw it in your eyes, and I saw you talking about it. I've known you for a long time, and I've got to believe that the incredible amount of missionary work that you've done, and the commitment and the opportunity to see what happens when you're out in God's kingdom and you're working with people had to really speak to you in some way. So why don't you share with everybody that's listening here who may not be as familiar with it and who hasn't checked out your website, and I've got links to your website on my website also so they can do it. Describe the details about how you went about announcing it and implementing the program at St. Constantine and Helen.
So we listened to your talk. You came in, I think it was October, and I wanted to kick this off. I got so excited about it. I wanted to kick it off in November before the Christmas season. So typically in our church, we have Stewardship Sunday, the middle of November. And I said, okay, we're going to kick this off on the middle of November. And that particular November, last November, was going to be the beginning of a year-long celebration in our church for our 100th anniversary. So our church, Greek and Albanian immigrants came to Webster, Massachusetts back in the early 1900s. By 1919, they had gathered together and they had formed what they started to call a church in 1919. So we were celebrating this 100th anniversary. But we said, okay, we were an immigrant church. We're no longer an immigrant church. For our celebration, how can we kick it off in a way that gets people to think about and really reflect on, in a serious way, who are we as Christians and who are we as a church? What do we want to be known for in Webster, Massachusetts, in Central Mass, Northeast Connecticut? What do we want to be known for? Who are we? Do we want to be known? Right now, many people know us for, or I should say, 15 years ago, maybe many people knew us for our Greek festival.
Right.
But I think in the last 10 years, we've done a number of things that we're known for some other things. We're known as the church in our area that has gone to Mexico 8 times to build homes for people in need. We've taken over 100 volunteers. And we've opened up our volunteers not only to be our own parishioners and other Orthodox Christians in Central Mass, but we've had probably 10, and this summer we were going to have 6 more high school kids, friends of my children in high school who aren't Orthodox, some of them who might not even be Christian, who were going to join us and have their lives transformed by going to Project Mexico. So we're known as the church that goes to Project Mexico, builds homes, not only in Mexico, but then we're also involved in Habitat for Humanity and building homes here. Well, we're known as a church. In the last 4 years, we run a Living Bread luncheon the first Saturday of every month, where we serve maybe between 80 and 100 people, and we serve a delicious meal. It's not like a soup kitchen. It's like going to a nice restaurant where you get treated beautifully. And we have people literally coming to our luncheon on Saturdays. We begin serving at 12:30, and people literally come at 10 o'clock because they love how our church looks. They love the atmosphere.
You need to tell me when it is. You need to tell me when it is, because I'm coming next time. I'll tell you what.
There you go. You're welcome.
It sounds fantastic. It sounds fantastic.
So we're known for these different things. So anyway, coming back to our celebration of the 100th anniversary, we said, what can we do? Let's kick off our 100th anniversary in what can be a meaningful, inspiring, and challenging way. And what's something we can do that could engage every person in our church? So I didn't want to just engage the typical 20% that always get involved. I wanted to do something where we could ask 100% of our people in our church to get involved. So what could we do? And in whatever we do, how can we get them to really learn or think about or reflect on who are we? Who are they as Christians? And who are we as a church? So we created, we decided to call it the Good and Faithful Steward Challenge. And we said, this is what we're going to do. On Stewardship Sunday, when for the last 14 years, we've always passed out a stewardship card asking the people, can you fill out the stewardship card and tell us how you're going to be a good steward and giving of your time, talents, and treasures back to the church? And we asked them to make a pledge of their time, talents, and treasure. Well, I kicked off the Stewardship Sunday, and I said, this year, we're not going to give you a stewardship card, or we're not going to give it to you right now. We'll give it to you a couple months from now. And instead of asking you what you are going to give to the church, we are going to do something a little crazy. We're going to give you something from the church to you. We're going to give out $30,000, where this means, and we had the envelopes ready. And we said, we're going to divide this up into 3 groups. So I have a church of around 160 families. And so we said around 55 families, we're going to break it up into 3 groups of 55. And on that Stewardship Sunday, we had 55 envelopes with people's names. And we chose the Sunday school families, the parish council, and the Bible study families, people involved in the Bible studies. And we said, we're going to give you an envelope with cash. Those who have families and children, $300. Those who are a couple, $200. And if you're single, $100.
Wait, say that again. Say that again. This is really important. This is the parable of talents again being spread out. Say it again, how you distributed it.
So we had 55 envelopes prepared with people's names on it. And inside the envelopes, there was a sheet of paper that explained what are we doing, what we want them to do. And there was cash, $300, $200, or $100 in an envelope. And we shocked our people by giving them cash. So that first Sunday, we probably gave out $15,000 in cash.
So it's $300 if you had a family, $200 if you were a couple, $100 if you were single, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
and so we said, this is a gift from our church to you. The only thing we ask of you is we want you to use this money to glorify God in any way you come up with. I'm not telling you how to glorify God. You know, we gave them some ideas because some people were looking at me lost, and I just said, here's some ideas, but you can do anything you want with it. You know, a person in need. We even said, if there's some people in our church, if you yourselves have a need, and you need to keep the money if you have a need. But if you don't have the need and you know someone who has a need, or there's a favorite charity that you've always wanted to give to, or there's something local that you wanted to do it and glorify God. So the only thing we're going to ask of you is glorify God, and then give us, and we gave them a sheet of paper, and we said, what did you do with it? Tell us the story. Tell us the reaction of the person, whoever you helped, or the organization you helped. And then how did you feel when you did that? And so the first group in November, we said, we'll give you 2 months. In the end of January, we want you to give us the sheets back. And then by the beginning of February, we're going to give it out to the next 55 families. And then the last 55 families were supposed to be in April, right before Easter, Pascha. And we haven't completed that, but I'll come back to that, our final.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you this. Let me stop you here for a second, because the homily that you delivered, I was watching you. So, I mean, I'm keeping track of you, right? That the homily you delivered, you actually said you actually used the word crazy in it. And I think you used the word crazy in it several times. And so what I want you to paint a picture for everybody that's listening, because I know there's clergy listening. I know there's parish council. So when you went to your parish council, when you and Jared went to the parish council and said, we've got an idea. How did you convince them to take a chance and to get on board? Because they weren't at the program when we were talking about this.
Right. So how the parish, well, the first thing I want to just highlight also, I emphasized to our group, this isn't a gimmick, because I thought some people were thinking, in fact, later on, one of my parishioners, one of my dearest parishioners, they said to me, you know, when you came out and you said this, these were some parishioners who were converts to our church.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, you know, when you came out with this idea, my husband and I looked at each other, we're like, oh, brother, here's another gimmick of trying to get people to do something. But I highlighted, it's not a gimmick. This is something very serious. I know for some people, giving away $300 is a big deal. I mean, maybe for some people who are already very generous, it's no big deal to give $300, $1,000, a couple $1,000, whatever. But for some people, I know it would be a big deal. And I really highlighted, it's not a gimmick. This is a powerful teaching opportunity we have, and it can instill a spirit in us, the joy of giving. Jesus says it's more blessed to give than to receive. How many of us actually believe that? And yet, if you're a giver, you truly believe it because you've experienced it. You know what the joy is in giving. So we go to our parish council, and to be honest with you, I thought of my parish council and said, okay, who's going to like this idea? Who's going to embrace it right away?
You're counting
who's
votes, right?
Who's going to struggle with it a little bit?
Yeah.
So I talked with a few of my parish council members before I presented to the whole parish council, those who I knew would love the idea and embrace it. And so some people loved it. These people loved it and embraced it. And basically what I did is I just presented it to the council saying, our 100th anniversary, who are we? What do we want to be known for? And I asked them, who are we? And got answers. What do we want to be known for? Okay, we're known for the Greek festival, but isn't it great to be known that we're the church that builds homes in Mexico? Isn't it great that we're the church that offers this delicious, wonderful meal that people actually spend 2 or 3 hours at because they love the hospitality that we show when we offer this meal? Isn't it nice to be there? So what else do we want to be known? So I got ideas from them. And then we started to discuss it. We had a 2.5-hour parish council meeting that was only talking about this topic, nothing else.
Okay.
And it was a challenge. I mean, we talked about it. Some people liked the idea. Some people embraced it. Some people had questions. Some people weren't too sure about it. Some people said, well, okay, maybe it's a good idea. Let's not do it now. Let's do it a year from now. Let's do it another.
Yeah.
Let's do it, whatever. So one of the things that helped us is we had just received one of the generous benefactors of our church had passed away in December. And he had given our church $100,000 for which we did things in our church. And then in his will, when he had died, we had heard that he was going to give us another $100,000. He left $100,000 in our will. So I was able, and this guy was a benefactor. Emmanuel Pappas was his name. And
God rest his soul.
God rest his soul, yeah. And so, I presented them. I said, listen, we're getting $100,000 from Emmanuel Pappas's estate. We weren't expecting that money. That's a gift that we're being blessed with. What better way would it be to honor Manny's memory than to do something like this? I knew Manny very well. Manny would have loved this idea. He would have embraced it and loved it so much. So I said, what a beautiful way to honor him. I mean, the church is receiving $100,000, $30,000 of it we're giving back in the spirit of Manny, but more importantly, in the spirit of Jesus Christ, we're giving it back. So that was very helpful. But I have to tell you a little miracle that happened.
Okay.
A couple days before the parish council meeting, I called up the nephew of Emmanuel Pappas, who was overseeing the estate.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to tell him the idea that we were doing with this, what we wanted to do with the money that we were receiving from his uncle. And so I call him up and I tell him this story. This is what we want to do. And there's silence on the other end of the phone.
Yeah, you never know how that's going to go, right?
Right, so listen, there's silence. And then his nephew, Dan, he says, you won't believe this, but 2 days ago, just 2 days ago, I was talking to my wife about a great story that I had just read in the newspaper. It was a story about a woman who was celebrating her 80th birthday, and she invited all her grandchildren, family, friends for her 80th birthday. And she told them all, don't bring me any presents. And so they all showed up for her 80th birthday. And for her 80th birthday, she said, I'm giving all of you a present in honor of my birthday. And she gave everyone who was present there $80 each. And she said, I want you to use this money and go bless other people. And so here Dan says, I just told my wife this story 2 days ago, and now you're calling me up and you're telling me this is what you're going to do with the money that Manny's giving to the church. And he was all practically crying on the phone. He was so excited.
I can only imagine how powerful that was.
Yeah, it was incredible. So in the end with the parish council, it was going on for an hour and a half. And after an hour and a half, we were sort of at an impasse. And literally, I said a prayer to myself in the middle of the meeting. I'm saying a prayer and I'm saying, Lord, I'm not sure how we're going to go forward with this. We're stuck. We're at an impasse. And I said, your will be done, whatever you want. Please enlighten everyone here so that we can be of one mind, because I had the votes. I had the majority vote. But I didn't want the majority vote. I wanted a unanimous vote from our parish council to accept this. And so I really said, Lord, please enlighten these people, but your will be done, whatever it is. And literally 5 minutes after I said this, one of the people who wasn't too sure about the idea, he raises his hand and he says, wait a minute. He says, you know what? I'm changing my vote. He said, because, since I've gotten involved in the church, more active in the church these last years, she goes, Father Luke, you've done some crazy things. You've pushed me in different ways. He goes, in the end, I trust you and believe you know what you're doing. And so he said, I'm in support of the idea. And within 5 minutes, everyone in the parish council was in agreement. We had a unanimous decision. And the beautiful thing was, by the end of the meeting, even a couple of the people who are uncertain about this idea, they were coming up with great ideas. One of the people who was uncertain, he said, well, okay, if we get money, can we combine our money with, like, let's say 5 families combine their money together. So instead of $300, if 5 families put their money together, we would have $1,500. And then maybe we could do something more significant as 5 families together. And I'm like, bingo, that's exactly what I want. I want us to be creative, to think of different ideas, to go out there. I'm not telling you what to do with this. Let's see how the Holy Spirit moves and inspires people.
That is just awesome.
And let me tell you one other thing. Another of the parish council members who wasn't too sure of the idea, but came on at the end, she said to me, she went home and told her husband. And then she told her neighbor what our church was doing. And her neighbor, I don't know if the neighbor was Christian or not. She tells her neighbor, and the neighbor was so inspired by what she said, what our church was doing. The next day, the neighbor comes back to her house, knocks on the door, and the neighbor gives her $600 in gift cards and says, give these gift cards to your priest and tell him to give them out to families that are in need.
That is so powerful. That is just an example of the Holy Spirit working not only in your parish council meeting, but with the people around it. And I think we've got a caller right now. So, Father, if you don't mind, Nick, are you still on the line? Hello, Nick? Oh, Gene? Oh, yes. Gene, I'm sorry. I'm getting a different thing here. So, Gene from Baltimore, welcome to Stewardship Calling with Father Luke. What's going on, Gene?
Well, I wanted to tell a story that none of us can really outgive God.
Amen.
And he proved it to me by, I based on what people would normally get back from the government at $1,200 per person. Mm-hmm. Well, I knew I wasn't entitled to it because I make more than what, they would give to a family or to a person. But I based it on that figure, and I gave it to the church to replenish the Sundays that we have not been in church, to supply the weekly trays that are passed around.
Right.
And the very next day, I ended up getting in the mail an unexpected check from an annuity that I wasn't even expecting, and it was the same amount, $1,200, that I had given to the church before.
You are kidding
so you
me.
really can't outgive God.
Gene, that is absolutely. Well, first of all, congratulations to you. I mean, you accepted the Corona Contribution Challenge perhaps before you even knew it was a thing, right? And even though you didn't get a check from the government, you still had the spirit and the heart and the steward's culture inside of you to be generous, and particularly to your parish, because all the parishes, you know, are suffering because of the closures and things of that nature. But what an amazing, amazing story that even in the face of that, the next day comes right back to you. Well, you know what that means, don't you? You know what that means?
Well,
you got to keep doing it, sweetheart.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You got.
That's happened more than once, too. It's just unbelievable.
And thank you so very much for being a living testament to the exact kinds of stories that we're talking about here with Father Luke Furones. Like, thank you very much for calling, and God bless you for what you're doing and keep you healthy and safe. So we're going to take a short break right now. And when we come back, we're going to have an opportunity for Father Luke to share with us some additional stories of the incredible ways in which his parish caused these financial gifts to multiply and how it was received by the beneficiaries. And again, just like Gene, I encourage anybody that wants to give us a call at 1-855-AF-RADIO, 1-855-237-2346, or you can throw in a comment on the chat room at ancientfaith.com/radio/live. Let's take a short break, and we'll be right back with Father Luke Furones.
Bill will be right back, but the lines are open if you want to ask a question or offer your thoughts. The number is 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO.
All These Things, a new podcast from Ancient Faith Radio, in which Hannah Vasquez offers encouragement and inspiration, as well as practical tips to mothers as they navigate their responsibilities with all these things: homemaking, childcare, food preparation, etc., while trying to stay focused on seeking the kingdom.
Being an Orthodox Christian in this world is hard, and mothering is hard. Combined, it's a lot to navigate and discern. I want to help be a guide for you in your journey toward the kingdom of God. That is the heart behind this podcast.
All These Things, seeking the kingdom of God as an Orthodox Christian mother. Available now on ancientfaith.com/podcasts.
Stewardship Calling is back, and we are ready for your call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Bill Marianis.
Welcome back to Stewardship Calling, in our first Wednesday program, where we're going to hear some of the amazing stories of the incredible ways in which an Orthodox Christian parish caused financial gifts to multiply and how it was received by the beneficiaries, told by my special guest, Father Luke Furones. Please remember that we'd love to hear from you, so feel free to give us a call at 1-855-237-2346, 1-855-237-2346. And the calls are starting to come in, so let's take the first one up if we can do this. And then, Father, I'm going to get you to tell some of the stories. So, Jared, am I seeing you on the line right now? Jared, are you with us? All right, we're having a few technical difficulties over here, so maybe we'll get Jared back on in just a second. In the meantime, wait, there we go. Maybe Jared, are you available now?
I'm here.
Okay, great. I'm sorry. Well, thank you for calling Stewardship Calling, and welcome here with Father Luke.
Hi, Father Luke. Good evening.
Are you the Jared?
This is Jared, my stewardship chair.
This is the Jared. This is the other guy where I saw the light bulb go off on your head when we were talking about this. Tell me, what were you thinking? What in the world were you thinking when we were talking about this idea in that meeting in Boston?
You know, when we heard it, and we had already known we had Manny's legacy gift in our hands, we kind of looked at each other and wrote a note down and immediately thought, this would be awesome. Can we try this? And why not? And that's how it all started right then and there. So thank you, first of all, Bill, for coming up into Patriots country and enlightening us.
See, you had to do that, didn't you?
I didn't agree to your rules. You got Father Luke to agree to them.
I think Father Luke snuck you in for that reason and that reason alone. Okay, that's all right. And then I'm sorry, one digression here. And then you have the audacity to send your quarterback and your best tight end down to Tampa Bay in our division. I mean, what in the world do you have against the Atlanta Falcons? Anyway, Jared, what caused this to resonate with you? Why did it resonate with you?
You know, for me, so I wasn't raised Greek Orthodox. I'm a convert. I was raised Roman Catholic.
Welcome home.
And for me, it struck me because, you know, we always hear about giving. We always, as Father Luke referenced, we always have every year Stewardship Sunday. But we're never really given a chance to learn it and experience it.
Yeah.
And that to me is what struck me, is can we give everybody that opportunity to experience the joy of giving for themselves and see what they can do with it.
Yeah. Now that's wonderful. And that is and by the way, that is one of those lasting legacies that becomes addictive. You know, just like Jean, who called earlier, this wasn't her first time doing something like that. And once you start to train people, this notion of continued generosity is really contagious in that regard. But I have to commend you, in addition to Father Luke, for having the courage to go back to your community and share this and deliver on it. So thank you very much for your courage.
It was a challenge. You know, Father Luke and I, we did some prepping. As he mentioned, he did some calling out just to see where he thought people would lie with this. But then we pitched it, and as he mentioned, it took some time for people to wrestle with it.
Right.
There was the obvious, you know, I think you have some that were like, yeah, that sounds great, not now, as Father Luke mentioned.
Yeah.
But we sort of said, well, when's going to be the right time?
Yeah.
And as Father Luke mentioned, we had one of our council members really turn the tides, and it gathered momentum, and here we are.
Yeah. That's kind of, the reminder of the old Kennedy quote, if not now, then when, if not us, then who, right? And y'all took the ball and ran with it. But I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being supportive for Father Luke. I want you to thank you for being supportive of the program and being a cheerleader for the program. And I want you to continue to do the great work that you're doing over there. And thank you for calling in, too.
Thanks so much. And thanks for the great work you do. Bye
God
now.
bless. God bless. And Father, if it's okay, we got one more caller coming in from Massachusetts. The Massachusetts lines are ringing in. I guess y'all are still in lockdown, so you got nothing better to do, huh? So Nikki from Massachusetts, are you with us?
I am. Hi, how are you?
Thank God I'm doing great. How are you? Welcome to Stewardship Calling.
Hi, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having Father Luke on. It's terrific.
All right. So what do you got to share with us? Tell us something that's going to inspire us and motivate everybody.
Okay, well, so I and my family are Tony and Maya and Zachary. We're parishioners, probably past 10 or 11 years. I lost track, in Father Luke's parish. And before I explain what we've done and not done with our stewardship offering, I just have to say that Father Luke and his wife, Prosviteta, are the most joyous couple. They instill a joy through God for everybody to take of their talents and offer. So it's really easy in our parish. It's so easy and it's so welcoming and warm to do anything, really.
That makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does.
The attitude of gratitude is just pervasive.
It is. It's tremendous. With our family, we're a family. We received our money back, when it was distributed, and you kind of put it in my purse, and I walked around with it for a while, and then we started family discussions, and those family discussions went on for a while, and it was actually really wonderful to sit down at the table and discuss over dinner what we were going to do with this, how are we going to give, and a couple of the things Father had mentioned was that if we can, think of a way to make this grow, think of a way to engage with people in this gift. So we really wanted to come and make a unanimous decision about how will this work for all of us. So we've done two things. One is that we had decided we were going to make baskets for immigrants in an immigrant center in Boston, and that was right before COVID hit. So we didn't actually end up doing that. But for the other part of our gift, what we started doing with our children and with all of us is that we started to set aside. Father doesn't know this yet. So I didn't tell him. We started to.
Well, you are now,
money.
just so you know, he's listening in,
So
Nikki.
I know.
This is kind of like a public confession, okay?
I know, right? Yeah. So we started setting aside money, weekly money, instead of going to Dunkin' Donuts, getting that extra coffee, instead of stopping at Cumberland Farms, getting that extra meal, like $1 here, $2 here. And at the end of every day, we tally up what each of us had not spent, and we've been putting that to a separate account, so that we can continue this and so that our children can understand how to set aside money in order to tithe or to give down the road. So right now we have probably about 200 saved, because our intent was to match the gifts that we were given. And so then once we've hit we match our gifts, and we have that, we've doubled it so that we can spend, a double amount. So in the meantime, it's kind of funny because we haven't used our money, and I thought, oh, shoot, we're one of these families that hasn't used it yet. What are we going to do? But
you got nothing to report yet, right? Except you're doing some amazing things.
Thank you. But in a lot of ways, sometimes, there's a journey of time too. And we've, with this pandemic now, we've realized that there are so many different ways that are calling to us to use this now that, we've already thought, okay, here we go. Maybe it was meant to be this way. So I just wanted to share that.
That is so phenomenal. And the fact that you have been continuing to sacrifice and put stuff aside and allow it to multiply and grow is just, it's extraordinary. And again, it'll be more meaningful now, as you say, because of the need that has grown. And if I can just encourage you to continue to do that, one of the things I preach a lot is the 10-10-80 rule, to teach your kids the first 10% that they make goes to the kingdom of God. The second 10% goes into their savings or rainy day fund or whatever you want to call it, their 401k, and then they live off the 80%. And, it's hard, but you can learn to do that. And just as an aside, my kids are in their mid-30s, and we were talking at Christmas. And one of them was saying that one of the things that they enjoyed most of when they were really young is we would always support the empty stocking fund drive at the Salvation Army. And we'd get these poor orphan kids, and we'd get a little bio about them. And then we'd go, and the family would go together, and we would buy presents for them, for bikes and clothes and everything like that. And the kids now in their 30s are saying that message, that memory is one of the strongest memories. So the things you're doing with your children right now to teach them to set aside those resources. And then when you now have a chance to deploy them, please let them be a part of that visible deployment of that grace, and let them experience the joy that comes from that also. But God bless you for doing that. And thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. No, thank you for sharing this, and thank you for having Father Luke on this program. It's wonderful.
Well, he's the best. So let's get back to him if it's okay. Father Luke, you still with us?
Absolutely.
Or
thank you.
You still want to hear more of your parishioners congratulating you, huh? So why don't you share? We've gotten 2 great testimonials, and we got another caller coming in soon. But why don't you share some of the other amazing stories of the incredible ways in which your parishioners have already caused these gifts to multiply, and how it was received by the beneficiaries?
So the first thing I'll say is a number of people that did exactly what Nikki was just describing, in that whatever amount of money they got, they doubled it with their own money, or they used their own money and then just gave the original money back to the church and said, use it for our Living Bread luncheon, or my agape fund or something like that. So that was very common. One of the first people, she came in, we gave this out in November. So this first person came, and right after this, the next day, she comes into the church. She says, I was so inspired by that. I've been telling my friends what our church is doing. And you know what our church is doing? Our church is giving inspiration to people. So she said, here, and she gave me $250 of gift cards. And she said, use these for Thanksgiving to help families in need. And she said, every month I'm going to do something different to help others. So when Christmas came around,
fantastic.
So when Christmas came around, she gave me another $250 of gift cards. And she said, I haven't even used the money that the church gave me yet. I'm going to use this each and every month, come up with something different. But I love what she said. The church is giving inspiration to people. So another of my parishioners, she said her son has a friend who's homeless, who was living in a homeless shelter in Worcester, the neighboring town. And so they wanted to reach out to this guy who was a great guy. She said just had some bad luck or whatever, some maybe drug issues. And they wanted to help him out. But as they were thinking about this, this guy happened to call him up just to say hi. He said it was a real rough night at the shelter in Worcester, and he was leaving Worcester, walking a 20-minute drive, but he was walking away from Worcester into coming to Webster. So this family said, we'll go and pick him up. And they went and picked up the guy, kept him at their house for some days, and they used the money that they had to help this homeless young man. That helped him out a little bit. The same time that they did this, she said she was driving in the parking lot of the shopping center, and she saw someone else going through the trash can in the parking lot. And she goes up to this person to offer him something. And this is what struck me. She said, my son's friend, we know him, and he's homeless. Then I went to the supermarket and met another homeless man and learned his name and started a discussion with him. And I helped him out with our own money. And then she said, I realized I started to put a name to these homeless people and realized each of these people is someone's son or daughter, wife or husband. And she goes, it's a cruel world sometimes, and it felt great to make a little difference, spread a little love and humanity and compassion. And she said, it was really this good and faithful steward challenge that pushed me to do something like this. And so she just said it really made me feel great and made me want to start doing more. These two sisters in my church, they said every year we give to the local charity that helps needy families in our town. And she said, every year we send them a check. But she said, well, when we got the money from the church, we decided to contact the director of this charity and tell them we want them to find some family that had a special need, and we would give them. And they said, we received $300. We added $300 more to give, so we gave $600. And we wanted to help this person. And so what she said, and this is the part that struck me, she said, for years we've been giving a donation every Christmas to this charity. This is the first time we met the director, learned more about their work, got connected to what they were doing. Yeah. And she said, and now we felt so great about giving. We're not going to just give once a year. We're going to start getting more involved with this charity, giving more often, and getting personally involved.
Contagious generosity. That's what a spirit of and a culture of generosity does. It creates a contagion that is of joy, and there's just no other way to describe it that people have experienced. We have another caller. Can I interrupt your stories for another caller?
Sure.
So, Pari from Lancaster, are you with us?
I am. I'm here. I just want to start off by saying thank you so much to Father Luke. He inspires us all in many ways. And one of my questions for you is, what is a good piece of advice you have for a parish with parishioners who are able to give yet not always willing to give?
So they have plenty of capacity, but they just haven't yet realized it. Right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, maybe the parish realizes it, but the parishioners are just not there yet with their willingness to give and their stewardship level.
Yeah, so can I give an answer, Bill, if you don't mind?
Of course, she's asking you.
One of the things that I think from this Good and Faithful Steward Challenge is we gave this little sum of money to everyone in the church. Now, there were definitely some people who were like, no, I don't want this money. No, I'm not going to take this money. But we said, no, this is something that we want you to take because we want you to actively get involved. And so I think some of these people did that, and then they discovered a joy where maybe they never had that joy before. During this COVID crisis, I had someone come up to me, and this is, I would say, it's partly the culture of our church, but partly maybe it was inspired by this Good and Faithful Steward Challenge. We had, at the beginning of this crisis, the local elementary school where my wife is a teacher. I asked my wife, we helped this school out. We helped the schools in our town out during Christmas and Thanksgiving with baskets. And I always tell them, if there's any needy families, if there's any way we can help them, we'll be glad to help them. So the school asked my wife, they said, would your church be willing, there's 10 families that have a very big need, and would your church mind getting together some big food baskets for these families? And so my wife told me, and I put out an email and a robocall to our church, and within 24 hours, we had gathered 13 baskets, big, huge baskets full of food, 13 baskets, and $2,000, just with one little request right away. And what really struck me was one person who, he had never given something like this to me before, but he comes up to me and he says, "Here, I want you to have this $500. Use it for your happy fund for the school kids, for whomever. Just here's $500. Just use this." And I thought, okay, this guy was a steward of the church, gives something, but he had never given me $500 to use to help the needy. And I think he had discovered the excitement and joy in giving. That's what I'm hearing back from my parishioners. So my answer to that question is there a way in your church in Lancaster, in the Annunciation, to get people involved, even if you have to push them a little bit, like this Good and Faithful Steward Challenge? I mean, I hope it's the beginning of many churches trying to do that. I mean, I can't tell you that. I can't tell you how great it is for our own church. Just great to cultivate the spirit. We got people excited about giving. And then when they read these stories, so here's another story. The nephew, remember I told you the nephew of the man, the benefactor who left the $100,000 to our church.
Right.
After we got the first round of stories, I sent the stories to the nephew to read. And the nephew wrote back to me, and he said that there were like 20 stories or something. And the nephew wrote back to me and said, "Father, I couldn't get past story number 7 without crying. I kept crying just thinking about how blessed your church is to be doing this, how blessed people are to receive whatever gifts they're getting, and then how happy my uncle would be seeing what's going on at the church." But here's a guy, just a grown man, saying he's crying because he's so inspired by this giving.
And that's part of the answer to Perry's question. I mean, I just want you to listen very carefully to this. The testimonial is one of the most powerful tools that we have forgotten how to use. The testimony, if you look in the gospel, what you see is people being brought back to Jesus because of the testimonials of people that were helped and were saved and saw him and witnessed him. So imagine now what Father Luke just said. Here is a, probably pretty well off kind of guy who's reading and listening to the stories that they can actually see salvation occurring. They can see generosity having its foundation and making a difference in people's lives. And it motivates people to keep doing that. In the chat room, Ross asked us a similar question of how do we prime the pump? And what the same thing I say to everybody is start somewhere and then have the people that started it tell their stories. And it's not only how do they feel, but what kind of reaction do they get from the people that they helped? And that then becomes contagious.
And that's exactly why we divided it up into 3 groups. The first group that received the gift were our Sunday school. So we thought, the kids will get excited about it and they'll push their parents. Those who go to the Bible study who are excited about it, and our parish council. And we said, let's first let the first 55 get it and come back with stories. And those stories will then inspire the second group that maybe is a little hesitant about doing that. And then we'll have more stories, their stories, and then we'll give it to the third group that's more on the periphery of our church, or maybe don't come so often. And they might not understand why we're doing this, but they're going to hear and read and see the stories, and then they're going to be inspired by that. And then I'm going to end. Before we end, I don't know how much time we have, but before we end, I'm going to tell you what my next idea is, how we're going to end our 100th anniversary.
All right. Well, hang on to that. Hang on to that thought. I want to stay focused on this thing. One of the things also to think about in this regard, for those of you that are trying to experiment with this, and something we did with this Roman Catholic parish here in Atlanta, was we posted the stories. In their case, they did little index cards. We posted the stories in the bulletin board in the hall, and then featured individuals telling their stories, 2 to 3 minute testimonials, after the church service was over, but before the dismissal and the fellowship hour and whatnot. So that there would be an opportunity to people to actually see witness of the practice of the faith. And so what Father Luke has done with their parish is they've captured some of these stories. And if you go to their website, or you can find the link off of my Stewardship Calling website on the Internet Radio tab, scroll down to today's date, May 6, 2020, and you can actually get a link to some of their stories, which I've captured together. They have a bunch more on their website. And so part of this is to continue to tell the stories, just like the people that have called in, and just like people that have listened, and just like people that have experienced the opportunity of sharing God's gifts and sharing God's grace becomes one of those contagious things. It's just like, Father, you know this from your work in missions. You know, one of the quickest way to get people on fire is to send them on a missionary trip, to send them out there into the field, actually get a chance to work with people. And I think that's one of the powerful legacies. So let me ask you this: do you think that this good faithful servant challenge has actually started to help change the stewardship mindset and the culture of your parish?
So it's interesting. I mean, I think it's help people discover in a small way the joy of giving, and so I'm hoping that they'll respond in a stronger way in stewardship to the church and to all the ministries as well. Now the challenge is we have this COVID crisis coming right in the middle of our whole challenge, so we'll see how things play out this year, but yeah,
well, but I think we heard from people that said, hey, we haven't had a chance to do it yet because we're all sheltering in place. And so, there's a unique opportunity, not only with the third tranche of envelopes that you're going to be handing out, but with also those people who have not yet fully deployed the money that they've been given. I think that can start.
Exactly our latest idea is we were supposed to hand out to the third group of people in April. We didn't do that because we haven't had church, but now we just thought we're going to send it out. I would rather have handed it to people, but we're going to send it out to this last third of people, because we thought, boy, there's no better time than now, when Amen. There's a lot of families that are struggling economically, that you can look around and find plenty of people who you can help with this. So we're going to send out that third group their envelopes in the next week or two.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Now, you probably faced some doubting Thomases along the way, and that you mentioned the ones at the parish council level, but even beyond that, have you started to see or sense that even some of those who question this have come around to understanding the power of generosity and true Christian stewardship?
Well, I definitely, I only had one very strong reaction when I went to go bless all the homes in my church, 150 homes in January. And when I went around and blessed all the homes, I would mention to some people, what do you think of this idea of the Good and Faithful Steward Challenge? So I was trying to promote it a little bit among people. And I had one person say to me, when I heard that idea, I was furious at you. I couldn't believe you were giving away the money of the church to the parishioner. I can't believe that. And she was still furious at me. But that was just one person. That's the only negative response. The other people who I think were skeptical have been quickly won over by the great spirit of everyone who's sharing the excitement of what has happened, who have discovered the joy of giving. So I haven't had any other negative comment that I've heard of, whether some other people. I mean, I've heard some people say, well, some people really they don't understand. They don't understand why we're doing this. But for me, it's every time someone says that, it's an opportunity to help explain, who are we as the church? What are we called to do? What do we want to be known for in the church? And,
it's a teachable moment, right? I mean,
it's a great moment. And again, we have two local newspapers in Webster, a small town of Webster, and in both newspapers, and then in the larger city of Worcester, which is 20 minutes away, we have 3 articles about what our church has done in this Good and Faithful Steward Challenge. So they were very prominent on the front page of 2 of the newspapers, and so we're going to write others. I haven't gotten around to yet sending other stories into the newspapers to tell them what have we done with this.
Yeah, once you start doing that, that's going to be incredible. Now, the difficult question, and I'm sure what some people that are going to be listening to this are going to be asking themselves is, okay, well, that was easy for them. They had a generous benefactor that kind of fueled it. So let me ask you the tough question. If you hadn't had a generous benefactor behind this, based on what you've seen, based on what you've experienced, based on what your parishioners have told you, what the beneficiaries have told you, the spirit that you've seen happening, is this the kind of thing that you think a parish ought to be prepared to fund on their own, even if they don't have a generous benefactor behind it?
So I think absolutely it's something our churches should do and could do, but it's going to be a challenge. I mean, I think so much of it depends on the culture that you cultivate, and it may take time. So maybe some people have to start planting the seeds and cultivating the soil right now to get this idea to pass. So in our church, now I'll tell you the next idea that I have.
All right,
and
let's
I don't
do
know
this.
how this coronavirus is going to impact it, because it's right in the middle of it. But we began our 100th anniversary celebration last November. We're supposed to have the gala event, 100th anniversary, this upcoming November. Now, I don't know if we're going to be able to do that, how it's going to change, and maybe we're going to have to postpone it to the spring or whatever. But whenever we have our final celebration for the 100th anniversary, one of the things we're trying to do now, while we gave out $30,000, we're trying to raise, just for the 100th anniversary, try to raise an extra $100,000 or more, just in honor of the 100th anniversary. And we're telling people, what are we going to do with that $100,000? Well, we have to do some things for the church, the operations, whatever, the building, some things we might have a need of. But what I want to do is I want to take a portion of that, maybe again 30% of it, and give a donation to our Metropolis camp. Maybe give $10,000, $15,000, something like that, for our camp. But then the other thing I want to do is, I've seen this and I've looked into it a little bit. I've seen some churches that have tried to wipe off the medical debt of families that can't pay off their medical debt. So there's organizations out there that when medical debt goes to collection agencies, they're never going to get the money from these people who can't pay this medical debt. So there's this one charity that says they make a deal with the collection agencies and they'll pay a penny on the dollar and wipe off medical debt. So if a church can give $15,000, they can wipe off $1.5 million of medical debt for around 1,000 families or 1,500 families. And so I looked into this one organization that would do it for central Massachusetts, so where we live. And at the end of our 100th anniversary, I want one of the things us to do, again, to show how we want to bless our larger community, is to give $15,000 to wipe off $1.5 million of medical debt to free these families from this noose around their neck that's burdening them with debt that they can never pay back. So anyway,
what an incredibly wonderful program and an opportunity of true Christian stewardship to help people in a more meaningful way and to use the blessings that you're going to generate from this celebration of what is really a wonderful event itself. 100th anniversary of any parish is
and I think what I think it is it starts off our 100th anniversary in a unique way, and then it ends again with the idea that reminding us, what are we all about? We've been blessed, so we want to bless others. Now maybe the idea is going to change, because maybe with this whole coronavirus crisis, there's going to be lots of families that are struggling economically, small businesses that are closing, and families. So maybe we'll do something different in helping families that are in need financially. And again, what our church has said for the last 2 months, I've said to all my parishioners, if there's anyone in need, and if you know of any families that are struggling and in need with their rent, with their food bill, with whatever, let us know so that we can try to help as a church.
Yeah, that's
what it means to be the church. We need to be reaching out and helping others.
As we mentioned in the April 1st Stewardship Calling program, in the two greatest times in history when Christianity spread the most virally, it was in times of massive pandemics and challenges, because it was the Christian communities that stepped forward and helped other people and reached out to other people and were there for other people, and others watching said, they're doing the right thing. They're really wonderful thing. Now, if you'll forgive me, I'm going to correct your terminology once. And this is horrible to do this for someone who's been as generous with everything. So you said you want to end the year with this. And I actually want to maybe shift your focus and say, that you're beginning the next 100 years of Saints Constantine and Helen with this new vision, with this new program, with whatever it ends up being, because I honestly think with the spirit that you've created and the passion that I'm sensing from the people and the stories that I've read, and I really encourage anybody that listens to this program, please go read the other testimonials that we didn't have a chance to get to today. And when you see what's happened from a cultural perspective, I think that you're actually building an incredible foundation for the next 100 years. Okay, one last question, and then I will let you go because I know I've kept you way over time, and I apologize, but I'm so grateful to you. Are there any final suggestions or comments or things that you would offer to anybody else who's thinking about doing something like the Good and Faithful Servant Challenge?
Yeah, my final word is simply, Jesus said it's more blessed to give than to receive. There's an incredible joy that comes in giving. Anyone I know who is a tither, anyone I know who is a generous giver, they will talk about it, never in a grudging way. Oh, I have to do this, it's a duty. They'll talk about it in the most joyful way, that the incredible blessing they receive when they give. And I think that's individually, any of us who try to give can share that. But I think as a community, we can also experience that. And it changes the whole culture. Our faith isn't some duty, some grudging duty that we have to do or else we're going to be punished. It's this living, dynamic relationship with a loving, generous God who's constantly blessing us. And then we have the joy of participating in that blessing by blessing other people and going out. I mean, I also want to highlight, please go and read the stories. There were so many stories I wanted to share in the time just passed that I couldn't share, of how people used the money, increased the money, blessed other groups, discovered deeper things in their own personal lives that helped them in this in this Good and Faithful Steward Challenge. That helped them discover, yes, I also can experience this joy, this beauty of giving. Let me conclude with a word that my father and mother taught me that I always remembered. One of the things I remember from my parents, who are very extremely generous people, who taught their children, who taught me and my siblings about tithing and giving from a young age. When I first started working at 12 years old, cutting lawns, and I'd cut a lawn for $10 and put $1 in a jar that would go to church and go to those in need. So my parents always instilled that in us. But I remember one of the things my father would always say to me, and my mother, they would always say, if you're going to err on the side of generosity. Yeah. If you're going to err on the side of generosity. And I think that's something that as individuals we need to understand and live. And as a community, also as a church community, we want to adopt that idea. If we're going to err, let's err on the side of generosity, of giving to others.
Father, that could not have said any better. That's great, great wisdom from Mom and Dad. And I just want to let you know, we got a comment here in the chat room from Joe that was also at the program in Boston, and their parish council has also approved the Good and Faithful Steward Challenge, and they're going to get ready to get started on it. Of course, COVID-19 crisis has put a little kink in it, but they're going to get started on it, and we're going to have yet another parish to tell. And so, Joe, I ask you to follow up with me at bill@stewardshipcalling.com, and let's get on the phone and let's see how we can do it. I encourage you can go to my website, stewardshipcalling.com, under the Internet Radio tab, Ancient Faith tab, scroll down to the May 6, 2020 program notes, and you'll see a beautiful picture of Father Luke. You can download the guide that I shared with Father Luke first on, with a bunch of questions asked. You can also download a bunch of the testimonials that Father Luke mentioned that we didn't get a chance to get to, as well as a link to the materials that his parish put together, and they're updating all of this on the incredible website at Saints Constantine and Helen. So, Father Luke, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done. I mean, for your lifetime of service, for the missionary work you've done, for the incredible leadership you've done, for all the seminarians that you've trained, for those of us like me and so many others that you have inspired with your Impetus Vitae's constant examples, and for your instrumental leadership in taking this good and faithful servant challenge to your parish and in what you're doing in that regard. And God bless you in many years in that regard. For everyone else that's listening, by all means, you can go to stewardshipcalling.com and download all of those materials, as well as any of the other materials you need to help you with the stewardship ministry at your parish, or leadership or strategic planning. I want to give a big shout out and special thanks to John Maddox and the family there at Ancient Faith Radio. I mean, without that, none of this would be possible. They really do provide some of the greatest resources to help us all on our journey to theosis. And I hope that you will avail yourself of the many resources that Ancient Faith has available. I would also encourage you right now, if you have the opportunity for generosity, to think about Ancient Faith Radio as a source of your generosity. They have a regatta campaign to help with the funding. If you find these first Wednesday and fifth Sunday programs of help, then by all means, please pass the word around. We have a fifth Sunday in the month of May, and we're going to be doing a special feature on the Assembly of Canonical Orthodox Bishops. If you need to reach me, you can always reach me at bill@stewardshipcalling.com, bill@stewardshipcalling.com. And please remember that two of the most important days of your life are, first, the day you were born, and second, the day you figure out why. And if you're not already living your stewardship calling, please begin by prayerfully discerning your why in your stewardship calling, and then start living the most extraordinary second half of your life. Thanks for listening. God bless. And as always, I pray that you SOTPAETJ, which stands for stay on the path, capital T, capital P, and enjoy the journey. God bless.
Welcome to another weekly family meditation on tending the garden of our hearts. I'm Elisa Bieletich.
And I'm Christina Wenger. Thanks for joining us.
This week, we're talking about two saints with the